You can look at a deal and say, oh, this is great, man, I'm going to get maybe a 14 or 15% IRR. But if they're tweaking the assumptions, things like rent and things like that higher, and it doesn't happen, the whole deal, you could actually lose money.
Move over, baby boomers. It's time for Gen XYZ. It's time to stop waiting on the world to change. It's time to be the change. It's time to stop thinking about how your life can be better. It's time to start taking action, massive action, to improve your life. Join Zach Winter and Rios every week as we learn how others have the grit, determination, and conviction to 10x their lives, and as we explore ways that can help you 10x your life. And welcome back to another episode of 10x for Gen XYZ. I'm Rios.
And I'm Zach Winter.
And today we have Steve Settlage. He's a former chiropractor turned full-time real estate investor, but we're not only going to talk about his real estate investing, right, Zach?
Yeah, that's right. The other reason we wanted to have Steve on the show is he's got a wealth of knowledge about wellness and about eating properly. He's been leading a plant-based diet for many, many years. I've also on a plant-based diet, and I know you recently started that as well, Mark.
Yeah, it's fun.
We'll stick to it. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So maybe we can start by talking about, when you've retired, you had no experience in finance or in accounting or real estate. You probably had a nest egg that you built up from being a chiropractor. Tell us about how you decided to make the decision to manage your own money instead of just, keeping it in a 401k or in mutual funds, et cetera.
I was invested in stocks or equities before I retired. And at one point, I was just 100% in Berkshire Hathaway. And I got out from that because due to his size, I didn't think he could keep growing. Mm-hmm. And then 2008 hit. And fortunately, though, I had read everything I could about Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and books about them and their speeches and everything. And when everything dropped, people were just flipping out. And I just kind of sat back and said, I wish I had more cash because I go buy something. And I just sat on the sidelines and waited for it to come back. And of course, it came back higher than what it was before the drop. And then I started selling stuff out and going, all right, I want to get into real estate because I realized that I don't have the brain power, the wisdom, the education, or the background to invest in equities. There's just so many moving parts. And so I thought, oh, real estate, that seems relatively simple. If somebody moves in, they pay your rent. I could understand that. And so that's what turned me around. So I started getting in and doing some things. I signed up with a guru, which was a big mistake. Lost some money right off the bat, good chunk of change. But I kept with it and, started doing some active things, semi-active things, and then transitioned over to passive. I started out doing some flips with some people I knew, and I bought some single-family houses in Las Vegas.
What year was that?
It was probably 2010, I think.
That's phenomenal timing, right? Because you bought it really towards the low end after the crash, when people were afraid to invest in real estate. Right. And there was probably a lot of opportunity to jump in and buy homes at good prices in Vegas at that point.
There was, but I didn't have the experience to buy. I should have bought 5 times as many as I did, and I shouldn't have sold them because I sold them as soon as the hedge funds came into town and rolled it over. I said, oh man, I made 100% return on my money. I'm getting out because, I had them levered, and then I rolled the money over into Texas duplexes, brand new builds. But if I had held out longer, I think I would have done better. But who knows? So hindsight's
always 2020. Exactly. Yeah. But to double your money, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I didn't do it with all my money. It was just a small portion of it, but still it was good. And then I met some guys back. I was looking to buy single family houses in the Midwest. And so I flew back there and traveled around, met a bunch of guys. And the guys I decided to work with, some of my partners who are CPAs, we decided to work with them. They were going to go, oh, we're going to do a flip fund. In other words, we're going to pull our money together. We'll find deals in Kansas City. We'll buy them, fix them up, and sell them. Well, about 9 months after doing that, they're going, this is not working. And they said, we want to do a hard money fund. And I'm going, what the heck is that? And so now, 8, 9 years later, we've got a hard money fund that's been doing relatively well. I mean, it's had its ups and downs. And now we primarily lend to build to rent, infill construction guys, which is, as you know, that stuff's on fire right now.
Just in Kansas City?
No, most Southeast and Midwest. Yeah.
So just to kind of lean into this a little bit, it started out as a fix and flip fund, and they were able to successfully keep all of you investors in the fund. It never closed out as it transitioned to something that was outside of the original kind of mandate, basically, right?
Yes, and the reason is there was only 3 of us investing.
Oh, okay.
And they put on a good dog and pony show to impress us. And so we go, oh, okay, yeah, let's do it.
That's great.
So
that's a long time to stick with them, though, 9 years. And hard money, what is it turning? It's turning every 12, 24 months, basically.
Yeah, right now we're turning under every 12 months, probably about 7 to 9 months. Yeah.
Beautiful. And it's still just 3 investors.
Well, we took on some other small investors when we had to raise some more capital, but that's about it. I think there's maybe 6 of us total in there.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And how do you structure it? Do you guys give yourselves distributions periodically, or are you trying to grow the overall size of the fund so that you could grow the returns?
No, we take distributions. I'm very hardline about that. I don't want to keep rolling my money over into it because I live off of, I'm in that fire sort of thing, and I'm living off of it. And I don't want it to get too big, have too much disproportionate amount invested with it. So I just got to kind of temper it depending on how the market goes. I've gone up and down with dollar amounts in it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I just ask it? I want to just go back to, you mentioned that when you first started out, you had gone to a group, you started following a guru, and I believe you said you invested with them initially, or did I hear that wrong?
Yeah.
Was it a passive thing, or how did that work?
No, it was an active thing. How to buy apartment buildings. I ended up buying some in Atlanta. C- properties, completely abandoned. I was convinced through going with them that, oh yeah, I could partner with somebody down there and we could rehab them all, and we could rent them out. And so it was brutal. Let me tell you. I mean, some of our contractors, I get a call one Saturday, and they're calling me up saying, yeah, I just got out of these wrist straps. And I'm going, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, we got held up at gunpoint and tied up. But we've been here for 4 hours, and we finally got away. I'm just going, oh my gosh, this thing's a friggin' nightmare.
So you weren't investing with the guru. He taught you just enough for you to be dangerous. And actually, in your instance, you were dangerous.
Yeah. Well, also, I found out later on the guru had a very bad reputation and everything out there, and really hadn't performed or done all these things, just gave me terrible advice. And so there's another member who's a part of the of our class too, who is my partner, boots on the ground, and he's trying to hold it together. And still the whole thing was just, so I ended up going back to the same broker I bought it from and selling it and taking a loss.
Right. So. Well, what I love about that, though, and it actually kind of falls into what we like to talk about here, which is this idea of trying to find ways to exponentially grow, your business. And so, in my opinion, even though it was definitely a learning experience, I'm sure, the impetus for you to really kind of strike out and take action, even though it might have been, unfortunately, and you had to pull it back, I think that that's great that you were willing to, take some risks in order to grow a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and not just take risks, but to have the grit and perseverance to not give up and say, well, I tried real estate, it didn't work for me.
I love that.
Let me put my money back into a 401k.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Well, I was too afraid of the 401k. So it was fear that drove me to keep going, not real grit. So. I'll call it grit. I'll take that and use that.
There you go.
But yeah, it goes to the point, looking back in retrospect, I go, gosh, what could I have done that would have made the most dramatic difference? And the most dramatic difference of what I could have done was to have read those books that I have on the list that I gave to you guys.
And what are those books, Steve, just for the listeners?
One's, let me pull up my list here. All available on Amazon, of course. First one is
I think I see it here. So one you had the Definitive Guide to Underwriting Multifamily Acquisitions by Mr. Robert Beardsley, young Robert Beardsley. He's out there doing some good stuff in terms of underwriting and really kind of approaching multifamily properties and commercial from a real kind of data driven type of outlook. The book itself, I actually have it and we'll put it in the show notes. It's a really good book to have. It's fairly short and it's an easy read, but if you've never underwritten before, it's a good one to kind of dive into.
Yeah, it's very interesting. He has a lot of conservative philosophies in there that help you. If you read it, and I've read it probably 3 times and I listened to all his podcasts, they kind of help you navigate the things that you don't know that you don't know. And that's always the stuff that's going to come up and bite you in the back,
Yes. Yeah.
The other one was, and I don't know why it's not on the list, is Investing in Private Equity Real Estate by Sean Cook. Real small book. His real name is Paul Caseberg, and he's underwritten over $2 billion worth of multifamily deals, both on the buy and sell side over the last, I think, 25 years. And so this book came because all of his friends and family come to him and say, hey, we got this deal. How do we invest? How do we know it's a good deal? And so he wrote it. It's kind of like, it reminds me of the Intelligent Investor, but for people who want to invest in syndication. So that one I highly recommend too. And his podcasts, which hopefully we'll put in here, are incredible. And I would recommend, listen to him 4 or 5 times. He only does a podcast once a year, but listen to him repeated times. And then the other one is the book by Brian Burke, Hands Off, The Hands Off Investor.
Right.
Yeah. Brian, that one's a little biased, but still he gives a lot of great information in there and stuff. So yeah, if you're going to start out, just pick up those books and just slowly start reading them and realizing that you're playing the long game here, constantly learning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really what it is. In real estate, it is a long game, right? It's not a get rich quick overnight scheme. And Steve, one of the things that I really admire about your approach towards passive investing, because I know you do a fair amount of passive investing in funds and syndications, is you've developed a really analytical approach to looking at deals. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your approach.
Yeah, I would say that I have a list of questions that I like to go through, points I like to get answered. And there's about, I think, 240 of them. Not that I get through all of them. And they all came from probably 4 sources. Those 3 books, and then also Jeremy Roll, who's a passive investor. He's been doing it for 20 years. He graduated from Wharton's. And in my humble opinion, he's probably the most insightful and conservative investor I've ever met. And so I try to follow his, sometimes I'll stray from him and everything, but I try to follow his guidance and his thoughts on things. And has lots of podcasts out there so you can see what's going on with him. But really it comes down to, I want to put the bet on the sponsor, not on the property, because the sponsor makes more difference than anything else, in my humble opinion. So it goes, you've got to go in there and say, okay, I want the sponsor, at least me personally, I want the sponsor to be conservative. I don't want them to say, yeah, we're going to get 6% rent increases. I want them to say, oh, we're going to do 2%. Like the other day, I was talking to somebody and he came up and he said, I said, well, who do you use for your rent increases? Do you go with CoStar? And he says, well, CoStar says they're like 6%, 5%, and 4% over the next 3 years. I said, well, what do you guys come up with? He says, we came up with 2.5%. I go, okay, how? And he says, well, we went back, looked at the average rent growth over 20 years, did rolling 3 years, and found what the lowest rolling 3 years was, and then put that there. So that's being like super conservative. And the reason it's so important is you can look at a deal and say, oh, this is great, man, I'm going to get maybe a 14 or 15% IRR. But if they're tweaking the assumptions, things like rent and things like that higher, and it doesn't happen, the whole deal, you could actually lose money, much less make any money on it. So you've got to be able to look at those things. So you want somebody who's real conservative. In other words, under promise and over deliver. That's what you're looking for. So that's the main
thing. It's such a good point.
Yeah,
it's such a good point, because oftentimes we'll see, particularly newer investors, they're chasing yield and they're looking at the returns that are in the investor's, property package or offering memorandum. And, somebody could put whatever they want in their underwriting to juice the numbers. So you really do need to look at who the sponsor is and have trust and confidence in their abilities.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's that's the tough job, is asking questions to determine their character. So one of the questions I like to ask them is to find out what their worst deal was, and then drill down into it and, see how they handle that memory and how they handled their worst deal.
That's a good one.
Then, of course, do background checks on them. And now I'm even getting bolder. I start asking them, things like, hey, what's going to show up when I start doing searches on Google, Glassdoor, and the internet? Who's going to show up as a negative there? And then, when I do a background check, are you going to have BKs? Anybody, have alcohol or drug problems? All these different things. I'm even thinking of asking if they've got an 800 credit score, just because they can't handle their own money. Do I want them to handle my money?
Yeah. So. As sponsors or general partners, Mark and I look at hundreds of deals before we actually find something that we think might meet the returns good enough for us to put an offer on. I'm just wondering, how many deals would you say you look at before you identify one to invest in from a passive investor standpoint?
Oh my gosh. It's got to be at least 100 to 1. I know over the last year and a half or so, I think I cold called, 260 operators. And out of that, I think there's probably 20 that are on my short list that I'm thinking of investing with if the deals look good as they come through. 20, maybe 30 at the most.
So let's talk about that. So you are cold calling sponsors or promoters that typically do multifamily or other commercials as well,
because I like mobile home parks, I like self-storage, I like multifamily.
And so you were, instead of them kind of presenting to you or trying to catch up to you on social or some other manner, you were actually reaching out to them to try to get them to show you their next deals or put you on their list, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Because my personal view at this point, and it's probably going to change as time goes on, so nobody take this as gospel. is that I remember reading Charlie Munger, and he goes, we want something with the longest possible history of sustained, stable income. In other words, a really good track record. And I thought, I go, that makes sense. And then I was listening to Paul Caseberg, one of the guys I was mentioning there, talk about economic storytelling. He's talked about that multiple times in his podcast. And I realized, I go, a lot of these pro formas, they're really just guesses when it comes down. Some of them are educated, some of them are more educated than others. And so I like to look for track records, and I like to find track records of guys who've been around before the Great Recession so that I know, oh, they can handle something when the crap hits the fan really badly. And it's hard to find those, and especially if they've been around that long, it's hard to find them because a lot of times they've got more investors than they need. And some of the ones that I've spoken to with that, they'll fill up in 24 hours for deals, that sort of thing. So it's next to impossible to get into them. So it's a challenge, but it's worth it, because if I find just one of those and I say, I'm going to put X dollars in and I'm going to do it for the next 30 or 40 years, and I'm not going to go, oh my gosh, this person is going to make me so much money, then it's worth all the struggle. So probably at least once a week, I go back in front of my financial calculator to deal with my frustration and boredom of doing all the cold calling. So it keeps me motivated. Oh, this is how much it's going to really reward me. So, yeah.
Interesting. So I know just switching off topic, sure. I know another area of your life that you're very passionate about is health and wellness. And you and I are both plant-based, have plant-based diets. And I know, at least for me, I've noticed a big improvement since I went plant-based a couple of years ago in terms of my kind of overall energy level. And just wondering, how long have you been plant-based? And, have you noticed a big improvement in your energy level and how you feel? And why did you decide to go plant-based?
Mark, you're not plant-based?
I actually am. I'm 2 weeks in on plant-based. Actually.
Oh, really? Good for you.
Yeah, good for you, Mark.
I was a charred meat eater, and now I'm vegetarian, like full vegetarian, not even pescatarian. Like I'm going for it, but I'm in the stage dairy. Of like, well, I'm not vegan. I mean,
you're vegetarian.
Yeah, totally.
That's okay, man. That's okay.
But yeah, it's very interesting. Right now, I'm going through. We're switching, but I'm going through all of the, hey, this looks neat in the shopping.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
so we'll end up at Whole Foods or one of the.
So your wife's doing it too, then, huh?
She has been, but she puts her foot down every few days. Like she's got to.
Well, your wife loves to cook, so I think it's harder for somebody who loves to cook.
Definitely.
Does she live in the valley, or where does she live?
We live in the valley. Yeah, me and my wife.
You know what she's got to do is she's got to check out Sun Cafe, because every Saturday morning, the guy has cooking classes.
We're going there tomorrow night. Actually.
Well, ask him about the cooking class, because she likes to cook. I go to his cooking classes because he gives so much nutritional and other information. And I hate to cook.
I love it. I will. I'll definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then once you eat the food there, and then she can go and cook that food, man. There you go.
Awesome.
So
that's a great tip, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Have you been there before?
Actually, yes. I'm from around here, and so before Sun Cafe was actually an Italian food restaurant.
Yeah,
for a long
right.
time.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, and
because it's been Sun for a while.
For a few years, but before that, I forget the name of it, but it was a pretty good kind of family style Italian restaurant that I used to go to quite a bit, actually. So,
but you haven't been there at Sun Cafe, have you?
Went there one time about 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
I might have was dabbling a little bit into vegetarianism, but not really committed. But right now, I'm pretty on track to making it at least through my first 30 days, and beyond that. For me, that's how I approach things. If I can do 30 days of anything, and I learned this from quitting. Yeah, exactly. I chunk it out. I smoked up until about, I think I've been off cigarettes for about 16 or 17 years.
Wow.
And so I was a long time smoker. And, when I initially quit, it's very difficult to quit, but then I learned something about myself about really chunking out the time and taking those wins. And after a certain period of time, when you do things like that, you can make it a habit.
Right.
And for, something like this, giving myself the 30 days, I know that if I can get there, it starts to become second nature, and I don't necessarily have to worry about it as much as last week. Last week was tougher than this week in terms of I need a hamburger.
Well, there's lots of good, meat alternatives out there now. So when you get the hamburger craving, go get some Impossible or Beyond Beef. It's really good.
Yeah. We just had some Impossible tacos last night. So
there you go.
Well, when you go, check out the cheesecake there for dessert.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
It's like, oh my God, it's mind-boggling.
Is it dairy? It's dairy free too?
Oh yeah, and you can't tell. That's what's mind-boggling about it. Yeah, okay. It's all done with nuts and stuff.
That's a great tip. Actually,
yeah, I take my carnivore friends there just to mess with them. And,
that's awesome.
Kicking and screaming, and then they're going, "Wow, this is pretty good." Well, what's weird is I think they got ranked either 1 or 3. Either the top or the third top restaurant in all of LA, not vegan restaurants, but of all restaurants.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So
they're great for breakfast. I love their breakfasts.
Yeah, they put out some good product there. So yeah.
Excellent. Anyway. And how long have you been vegan?
Myself, probably 5 years, I think, 6 years, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe a little longer.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I saw Game Changers, the documentary. And
with Arnold.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Arnold's in it too, and he's not full on vegan, but he's mostly plant based.
Yeah,
he'll have meat occasionally, but great documentary. And what hooked me was not only all of the scientific evidence on the long term health benefits of not eating meat, but all of the athletes they had on that documentary.
Right,
high performing athletes. Yes, right. They're still able to compete and perform really well at very high levels. So that's been great.
That's actually something I think you told me about that, Zach, but that was something that had always stuck in my mind, this whole, where am I going to get my protein from?
It's a really a misnomer,
Yeah.
There's tons of plus, you just drink protein shakes if you're not getting it from your regular diet.
Are you a power lifter?
Me? No.
Then don't worry about your protein.
I don't have to worry about it. No.
Yeah, pretty much it in a nutshell.
Right.
Yeah, there's ways to get it. But that was a great movie. Did you ever see Cowspiracy?
I think you gave me a DVD for that one, didn't you?
And you threw it away. Thank you very much.
No. I've watched quite a few of those. The ones with the animal rights, it's a big downer for me, right? So I have trouble watching them.
They had a second one called What the Health.
I didn't see that one.
That one's really good because they've got a lot of good data. That one will blow your mind if you really want to see. I highly recommend that one. Good research in it, great interviews with lots of doctors and everything. Have you ever seen Forks Over Knives?
Yes. Yeah, my daughter turned me on to that one. That one's a good one.
That's a good one. But yeah,
great.
Pardon me? What'd you say?
I was just going to say all of these sound great, like being new to it and not really having a huge why other than, I want to make it to my 30 days and knowing that there's a possibility of having some health benefits, being able to kind of learn a little bit more about the positive stuff will be really good.
Yeah. Watch Game Changers, man, because you really go into a lot of the health benefits. So
great.
And Forks Over Knives will get into it deep. And then What the Health will really get into it. It'll blow your mind. But if you really want to find out what the science says, follow nutritionfacts.org and just sign up. Okay. It's for free. And a guy named Dr. Michael Greger runs that. I've met him in person, talked to him multiple times, saw him give a lecture to 400 MDs at Kaiser several years ago because I was donating to his deal. And in 5 minutes, he'll give you a topic about nutrition or whatever. Well, it's all about nutrition with all the scientific research, and he highlights, underlines it with yellow and everything. So it's real simple. So anyways, at the time, I was doing paleo, and I watched his videos every day. And after 6 months, I go, the science is so overwhelming with the health benefits for all this stuff that I was an idiot if I ignored it. You know, and so that's what convinced me. It's just there's so much data out there for it. Just huge volumes of data. And you look at the biggest issue that people have is not life expectancy, but health expectancy, where quality of life decreases as we get older. And 70% of all diseases, or 70% of all healthcare costs go to chronic diseases, and probably 80% of them can all be prevented or reversed by diet changes.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
and you know what's really interesting, Steve? I think in one of our communications, you kind of made the connection between longevity and return on investment.
Right. If you can live, I think if you do a full plant-based, this was a study done out of Loma Linda, and I think it was with men. I think they lived somewhere between 9 and 14 years longer, is what it was, which is quite a chunk of change. But if you invested at 11%, I think IRR over 14 years, let's say by that time you had $1 million. Well, at the end of that 14 years, you'd have $4 million. So it can really, having that extra time, not only just for yourself, but if you want to leave a legacy or pass it on to your heirs or whatever you want to do with that, it can really be the other part of the equation as far as getting your finances strong.
That's a really interesting, that's a great perspective, actually.
Yeah, everybody's making money. It was so funny. I go to these conferences, I see guys talking about, I'm doing this deal and that deal. I'm looking at it, I'm going, dude, I go, you're waiting for a heart attack is what you're doing. Look at you, man. He goes, yeah. He goes, once I get my money together, I'll stop doing it. And I go, yeah, well, you got to look at the other side of the equation, man. You know?
That it's almost as if also that day doesn't necessarily come.
Does it? Yeah.
It doesn't. And there's a lot of ways for you to, even with what we do, there's a lot of ways, especially on the active side, to buy yourself or get yourself into just a job. Like the maintenance of a lot of these things is really something to consider, and so taking a holistic kind of attitude about, just the entire life aspects of let's call it the wealth question is very, very important, Well,
Mark, you bring up a really good point, because what is the ultimate wealth we want but time? That's why we're usually chasing the yields for time. That's why we chase health, because it gives us longer time, but also while the time's here, it makes a better quality of time.
Yeah.
And so I would seriously tell people to do you want to be active with this stuff, or would you like to be passive so you can get more time? And if so, what does that mean? How do you study for that? How do you perform and get ready for that? I mean, somebody may only be making, $50,000 a year, and they don't have enough to become an accredited investor, but they can start learning, and things are changing out there where it's beginning, where there's more space for non-accredited investors to invest in syndications. And you start your learning process, the earlier you start it, and if you just start chipping away at it, just do small bits and say, look, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to read 3 pages a night, maybe, or something like that. And then when I'm finished with it, I'll read another one, or I'll listen to this podcast once a week when I'm on the treadmill at the gym. And you just keep doing that. And if you've got some years ahead of you, you're going to be amazed at what happens. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the passive investing. And I learned that from Jeremy Roll because I was active. I was like, oh no, I got to control everything. Or what
got to control everything.
Or somebody does that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's more about finding people who you really like and trust and know. And trust is the big thing, not like so much, but trust, and investing with them, see how they do. And I look for sponsors to be married to, because people in my family, I'm in my mid 60s, people in my family live to be in their mid to late 90s. So I'm looking for people to be married to for the next 40 years. And I tell them that right up front. I go, you guys have a contingency plan? Do you have, something so somebody else can take over if somebody's getting older in the group or whatever? But I think that's a good way to think, kind of think like the Chinese do about finances. They have multiple century plans. Like here in the United States, we're just trying to get to retirement or whatever.
Yeah, it's true. And some, if we're talking about, the Y and the Z portions, maybe even the Z, they're thinking 12, 24 months. Right.
Instant gratification.
24 months.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and I was that way too when I was young. I'm looking back and I'm going, the biggest mistake I made was not realizing the effects of compounding. Not only compounding knowledge over time, but also compounding interest, and starting early and just being persistent, but not going so crazy that it burns me out.
Right.
And looking at it, go, hey, how can I do this so it's fun? You find other people who are doing it too. Like I've got a network of people who I invest, who also invest. And so I'm, talking to them on the phone, emailing on a regular basis and everything, seeing what's going on. And that kind of keeps it going and learn a lot. And but start early and go for the long game and learn to work a financial calculator. And I'm telling you, man, you will be blown away by how much you can make just being persistent.
That's great.
Starting early.
That's great.
Yeah. Start early, be persistent, and get some degree of education on the finance side to understand how to analyze deals and not just jump into the next shiny object.
And I'll just make that connection right now. Compounding is 10x, and 10x is compounding. Whether you're compounding, the time or the quality of your time, compounding money, all of that. That's really what we're talking about here. Exponentially growing things.
It's the eighth wonder of the world, right? Compound interest, compounding.
Right. Yeah. No, it's phenomenal. So, and talk to as many sponsors as you can. Talk to as many investors as you can. It becomes entertaining when you do that. It can be fun, and you'll learn a lot. So, start early, finish late.
Right.
I'm just working on the finish late part. I didn't start early, so I got one half.
Well, this has been great, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, Steve.
Absolutely.
And it's great to see your face. It's been so long since we've had the in-person meetings.
Right.
So, being able to do this and see your face.
Are you guys still doing your meetings, or what? Or I sorry to interrupt. Are you guys still doing the meetings, or what's happening with those?
We still have the forum, but we haven't had a meeting in just a little bit. We're just kind of doing a reset, and we'll probably start again. Pretty soon.
Yeah, we actually were looking at new venues, and we're ready to go live, literally a few weeks before Delta hit.
Oh,
and then that threw a monkey wrench in it again. So.
That's right.
But we will be starting it up again.
Do you know where it's going to be?
Not at this point. We've looked at a couple of different venues, but we haven't pinpointed a definite location.
Right.
So we'll put out an announcement to the group.
Yeah, and it'll be local. Probably within this. If you guys know Los Angeles in this kind of valley-ish area or somewhere, somewhere close to all of that.
Yeah, that's one thing I highly recommend anybody who's listening who has any inkling of interest of getting into this is go to those meetings. Yes. Just start talking with people.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great networking way to meet people that are also passionate and interested in investing and to learn.
Well, this is where you, Zach. Remember we were at that restaurant over in Van Nuys. What's that?
That's right.
Yeah, the lunch.
Was it the Was it the Denny's thing?
Steve Love at at the Sizzler.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Well, that's also a really good, a really good tip because, a lot of us, especially coming out of the coronavirus, being on the computer and even talking on the phone, we feel like we can do all of this stuff on the computer. And there's really something to be said about getting out there. And even if you're not belly to belly, as it were, the idea of being belly to belly and face to face, or even just getting out of the house and going to a weekly gathering is so important. It's taking that step. It's just making a move, that will hopefully eventually lead you to just taking another step and another one. And then pretty soon you get into taking action is really the overarching theme about all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something about the face-to-face. I know I was at breakfast this morning talking to somebody, and they said, this is the first time we've been in a restaurant since COVID hit. I go, what? Really? And then I realized, because there's a group that I walk with every week, and so we'll go to outdoor dining, and then I have another couple friends that we go outdoor dining. So probably 6 months into COVID, 8 months into it, once they let us to outdoor dining, I've been doing it probably 3 times a week just to get that face-to-face with people, just get out there, talk to a waiter or waitress, and stuff. So, it's a good idea. So you guys do it. People are probably going to be clamoring for it. Get a big venue.
Yeah.
Get outdoor.
Yeah, exactly. We've been looking for an outdoor location.
Rent a parking lot.
There you go. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, this has been fantastic, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And if anybody has any questions, wants to bounce ideas off me or anything, you guys have my email.
So we'll plan on putting Steve's email in the show notes for anybody that's interested in reaching out. And so please look at the show notes.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And you put in my PayPal account too if somebody wants to drop some cash in there. That's fine.
There you go.
We'll just keep that between us.
Very good. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
All right, Steve. Have a great
good
afternoon and weekend. Talk to you later.
Take care.
10X for Gen XYZ is hosted by Zach Winter and Mark Adair Rios, co-founders of Prosperity CRE, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and building long-term wealth. If you like the podcast, please give us a positive rating and subscribe to be notified about future content. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our approach to real estate investing, you can download a free copy of our real estate investment book, Investing for Cash Flow and Long-Term Wealth, by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thank you and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.